And about 5 or 6 boys come up to us and say, sif hwn o clal i'r ball. And James was like, okay. So basically, we want to play football. So we did a proposal. Even before we really had a team, there was money.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, we were every week playing on this field. But obviously, if you're playing football, everyone's in.
Hi, guys. Welcome to Response Able with Professor Nikki James. I mean, louder is better in my opinion.
I think so.
Because then we can yell.
And we can yell.
I feel like I have a fake loud voice. Because if I actually screamed right now, I would be super loud. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Response Able podcast and greetings from Cape Town, South Africa. Yes, that's right. I am in a new continent. It is June 3rd and I have a month until the Northeastern students arrive, and I'm excited to have them be a part of the Impact Entrepreneurship program this year, and we are in full planning mode to get everything ready for their arrival. But also, I'm so excited to bring you some of the stories of some of my favorite people that I get to work with every year here in Cape Town. I'm not going to give anything away, but there are some amazing people here that I get to work with every year, and I'm so excited for you to hear their stories and their journey from all walks of life to what they're doing today. But right now I get to introduce you to Barry Lewis. Now, Barry and I actually had this conversation in London, actually to be specific, in Paddington, London, which is a very long way from where we met each other in Sweet Home Farms, an informal settlement or informal community in Cape Town, South Africa. So Barry has an amazing story of how he went from studying architecture through doing architecture in London to where he ended up and where I met him and jumped on the journey of his story in Cape Town. So I'm really excited for you to hear his journey. And I think the journey is important of how he transitioned and follows his purpose along the way. But what I think is really beautiful about Barry's story is he's used his journey as a story of learning and self-development and growth, which is really beautiful. So let's jump in and hear the conversation that I have with Barry and learn from his wisdom. I never thought that I would be sitting in Paddington in London, England, having this conversation with you.
Yeah,
is that fair?
Yeah, that I didn't either. I would never have thought that either.
Both of us share citizenship here, but met
only
in South
only one
Africa.
of us sounds like British, though.
Thank you so much for agreeing to turn on the microphones for one of our fabulous conversations. And I just have to say that every single one of my students tell me how much they love the session that you do with them. And I'm sure they're all listening to this really excited to get like a taste of Barry, who they miss a lot. And some of the ones that, will be graduated now, which
Amazing.
Is really cool. And they'll be out in the world. So as I said, this is all about like our career journeys and career stories. So I guess for me, most of it all starts at university. So can you explain kind of what you studied at university, what made you decide what you were going to study, and any other fun facts from that part of your life? Let's go back, way back.
Yeah, they were some of the great days. I studied at Liverpool University.
No way. That's where my PhD is from.
Is it?
Yeah.
You did a PhD in Liverpool?
Yeah. I never went there. I did it all online. So.
Liverpool alumni?
Yeah. Liverpool alumni.
Well
anyway, sorry to interrupt.
So I did my part 1 and my part 2 at Liverpool. I grew up in Devon, which is very green, a lot of old people and lots of cream teas and cows, lots of very nice things like that. I knew I wanted to study architecture, so I knew I had to go to a grainy, dirty city.
Okay.
I needed to get urban,
mm-hmm.
and that was my great drive. And so Liverpool was an obvious choice. It was coming up for European Capital of Culture at the time. I supported Liverpool. And one of my friends lived in the village that I grew up in, and he had studied architecture at Liverpool, was about to graduate. And he says, look, you should consider it because it's a great course.
Okay.
And actually, he ended up tutoring in one of the halls of residence and actually said, Barry, which type of room do you want? You know, you can have an old court, bigger room, less fancy, or you can have a more modernized room with more, sockets and things. I said, give me the old room.
That does not surprise me at all.
And I was in K Block in the top floor looking down into the old court at Derby and Rathbone. And those days were great days. Liverpool was a beautiful place to be, still is. I am trying to get back there at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of really beautiful humans exist there. And the course was very conceptual.
Mm-hmm.
It felt conceptually, it was a great home for me. So, I loved being in Liverpool. I don't know why I wanted to study architecture, but age 15, I just knew I was going to do architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a story about me and my friend, because at school you have to do work experience for a week. And so you speak to your work experience person and they said, what do you want to do? I said, I'm going to do architecture, period. This is what I'm going to do. He said,
wow.
And they actually said, well, okay, then don't go into an architect's firm because they'll ask you to print drawings and they'll make you do the T and you might hate it.
Oh,
and
that's very wise.
It's a beautiful thing, beautiful advice. And I said, what else? He said, what else do you like? I said, well, I like playing golf. And he said, well, go on the golf course. And I did. I did a week of learning about the manager and what he has to do and the greenkeepers I learned all about running a golf course and I actually really enjoyed it. My friend went into the architecture firm and decided not to be an architect and went to become an engineer instead.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say it's just because of that, but he then didn't even apply for architecture. Like, I'm not doing that. No.
Okay.
Absolutely not. And so I was still convinced and it takes something, you have to be a little bit loose in the head to go through the process of becoming an architect. And then as an architect, it's a brutal life. It's not like, there are lawyers and they have a desktop and there's a timer on the desktop and I've done a little bit of work. I've thought about this case and that time is on and it's clicked to a client and then they'll bill them. Like the amount of time that an architect thinks, draws, makes, none of it is really accounted for. Yeah, it's very taxing. Obviously, it comes with benefits, but it's a very tough profession.
Okay. Yeah, because it's almost, I mentally think of it as a little bit of a white collar job, but it's also an artistic job. I'm sure that you probably got inspiration at midnight or 3 a.m. in the morning and you've got to draw while the inspiration strikes.
Yeah, and also you wake up in the middle of the night in terror because you've missed something.
Oh.
Because you're going to build something and you've missed something.
Okay.
And it's brutal because it's like, well, you could be taken down. Litigious society. It's just like, well, who do you go after? You go after the architect. Well, he missed this out. He missed this drawing. He missed this line in a detail.
Okay.
Which represented, I don't know, a vapor barrier or damp-proof course or something. And it's like, well, he wasn't there. And obviously, if it's basic, you should have it in there. But yeah, they'll go after the architect if something goes wrong.
Okay. Isn't there a step of checking?
Sorry?
These things, isn't that what structural engineers do?
No, so
misunderstanding?
Obviously there's quality management within your own system, within your own company, but you would never, the checking from our perspective is anything that's remotely engineering based on a drawing, refer to engineers' drawings. You would always deviate to someone else because you will not be responsible for something that you do not qualify to.
Okay.
So the engineer does their thing. And then, I was actually part of a practice when I first graduated in London. And the principal, who's a scary guy, his thing was a bunch of architects don't know how to make money. I'm just going to make money. So he wasn't very creative, but he was a genius at keeping out of trouble.
Oh.
And being like firmly in control of anything that leaves, in terms of detailing, but also in terms of what you write in a letter. And I would say his only genius was his ability to write a letter. And that was actually a skill that I didn't think I needed. But there's a beautiful skill in writing a letter or even an email that says one thing, but it implies something else. And to try and have that sort of double layering of message. And there was one moment, and it's a very strange thing, because I came back from South Africa, in the last few months. So I'd reconnected with an old friend of mine who's an architect, and we talked about an old scheme that was in somewhere in North London, Camden. And he said, yeah, we ended up drawing that on site, and we were the concept architects back in the day.
Okay.
And he goes, oh yeah, you worked on that project, didn't you, Barry? And he goes, yeah, there was a fire in the building. Yeah, and it wasn't a major thing, because it was a hostel for the Salvation Army Housing Association for people, struggling with homes and housing. And so, having a fire is not a major issue. No one died and nothing happened. But the interesting thing about the story was that in the early days, the legislation shifted in the design of this thing, and we were designers, and it said, like, you need 2 staircases. But if you put 2 staircases in this building, it's not massive. It's like there would be no project.
Okay.
Because there's no space. And actually, it qualified on the basis of other things, but because of this one bit of legislation, it said, oh, no, you can't do it. So, in essence, we had to write a letter to the local authority, and they said, and they came back saying, no, it's absolutely fine. So that was almost like this get out of jail, because it nearly wasn't even a project at all. We're in the global north. It's extremely litigious. It's extremely safeguarding and all this sort of stuff. But from my perspective, do you have FD30Ss, like fire doors for 30 minutes and smoke detecting, all of the infrastructure that you need to make sure that no one actually perishes? Because having another staircase wasn't going to change that story, but having another staircase would determine whether the project happens or not.
Right.
So being able to write a letter, putting forward a little case, and then they respond, and they literally did like a one-liner, no, it's absolutely perfectly acceptable.
Right.
And he goes, I have no idea how you got that letter from the local authority. And it was because of your ability to write a letter.
Right. The ability to communicate.
Yeah. Huge. Absolutely huge. And it wasn't like you're trying to get away with something, because you have to be reasonable. What is the reasonable response to this thing?
Right.
So, yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, wow. That's fascinating. So you mentioned that studying to become an architect was quite a journey. So can you explain, because I know it's not your typical undergrad 4 years, then out into the world. There's a whole process to it. But it's a little bit different.
Yeah, so it's changing now, but in those days, and certainly up till now, let's keep to the British system. And there are sort of affiliates. But you would have to go through 3 parts. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. Part 1 is an undergraduate course, nominally 3 years, so everyone understands. And so at Liverpool, they did a BA Honours.
Yeah.
And then you would take a year out. And then you would ideally, and I'll tell you why, but you then take up 12 months of work experience.
Okay.
In an architectural firm.
Okay, well, was that part 2 or was that?
I'll get to part 3.
Okay.
So, and then you would go for part 2, and then part 2 is a 2-year either master's or bachelor of architecture.
Okay.
Much more in depth. Well, in our case, even more conceptual, understanding the city in different ways. And I worked with one particular human called Dr. Ian Jackson, who is now professor at Liverpool University Architecture Department.
Okay.
And he didn't really ever leave. And
so he was a student with you?
He was my colleague, yeah. So we worked together, and he does some very interesting things, most notably in West Africa. But yeah, so you then do part 2, and that was a Bachelor of Architecture, and then you would go into the world.
Okay.
But you're not an architect.
Okay.
Because actually what you need to go through the gateway of part 3. Now, part 3 requires you to have 24 months of work experience.
Okay.
So every month of work experience you do, you sort of log what is it you've done, what is it you've learned, and all this sort of stuff. It gets signed off, and all this sort of stuff. And then after 24 months, then you can say, well, maybe I should go for my exams, my sort of part 3 professional exams.
Okay.
And so that exam was pretty brutal. So you have to do, I had to choose a project, so it's like a case study, lots of revisions around contractual understanding and lots of different things, detailing and different things. And then you would have a 3-day exam, and that would be in the office, supervised, make sure you can have books and things because that's the real world scenario.
Right.
But you're not allowed to, no one else is in there with you. So you have to muck it up.
You get to go home and sleep, right?
Of course you do, yeah.
Okay.
But you have to leave everything in the room. You can't take anything out. And the point is that you do the exam and then you do the answers, but you'll also have an interview.
Okay.
And they'll want to know, was it you? Did you do you understand what it is that you've done?
Right.
What did you miss? What do you think you missed? Because then after that exam, you'll then talk to people and go, oh no, I missed out the contractual, subsection 1.2b or something. And actually, this is the brutality of the course, right?
Mm-hmm.
I started in 1996.
Uh-huh.
And 7 years later, so 1996 at Liverpool, there were 90 students.
Mm-hmm.
How many do you think went through from 1996 in the shortest amount of time to become an architect 7 years later? How many do you think?
By what you're saying, I'm going to say not very many.
Not very many.
But I feel like I would assume it would be half, but I'm sure it's probably way less than that.
In terms of that, my understanding of the people because some people went to different schools afterwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they could have maybe, and we didn't know. But in terms of the batch that came through from 96 to Liverpool, there were 2.
Oh my gosh, out of 90?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was me and Nick Moss.
Okay.
Obviously, others went on to do their part 3 later.
Right.
I know plenty of architects that I studied with, but not many of them did it straight away.
Okay.
Because it's so brutal, you're just like, no, I just need a break. And actually, I wonder if I didn't do it straight away, would I have had a different type of career? I don't know. Because a lot of the ones that went later are still in what I would call the conventional architecture of making and designing buildings. And because there's lots of architecture adjunct.
Right.
Processes and jobs and things like that. But yeah, so there's a lot of people that I know who are doing architecture.
But they just took a little bit longer
just
to get through.
Because you're tired.
Yeah.
It's like, give me a break now, please.
So,
and part 3 is kind of brutal as well, because you have to work in the day and you have to work at night.
Right.
Because you're in the real world then.
Is it fairly standard that so is that kind of, you get a job as part 3, you do the 2 years with the part 3, and then do they usually keep you on?
Well, it's up to you then, because I think a lot of practices would have paid the part 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so there may be a deal saying, well, if we pay for it, then we'd rather you stay for a couple of years.
Right.
I ended up leaving the practice I was in because I knew roughly what they were about. It was about making money.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, it was good for me just because I had no money because I'd come straight out of uni. And, it's also a very expensive course. You have to make models and everything.
Right.
But I knew that to become an associate, and essentially they said, do you want to be an associate?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sat around the table and you're sitting in an associates meeting. Essentially what they're saying is we have to take a commercial view on this project. I think we shouldn't be doing this planning project. We should be taking on more working drawing packages. So working drawing packages is taking on someone else's design and doing all the detailing and putting it into the system and making sure you can get built, which is fine. You're much more in control of the process.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no designing of a scheme.
Okay, there's no creative part.
That was the planning process.
Right.
And they basically took a view, I'd rather not, let's not do that. And essentially, because that project that I tell you about, I won't mention the name just in case, it was on sort of iteration number 26 or 27 because of the changes that happened in the planning process. So, and you don't always get paid for those.
Right.
Just because you do the work doesn't mean you get paid for it.
Right.
Especially in the planning process. So, kind of brutal. But I was also there not to just be a yes man that says yes to the commercial. I'm like, okay, I can't do that actually.
Okay, so there was an opportunity to kind of stay at the place where you did that part 3, but you decided to leave. Where did you go?
Well, I did a naughty thing, and there was previously a partner in that firm, and he had left, taking a couple of people with him, and they were much more, we're going to do commercial projects, but we're going to do a lot more social housing projects as well.
Okay.
And sometimes it's a bit more relational, co-planning with communities and all that sort of stuff. You have to do the commercial projects, but it wasn't just about the commercial projects.
Okay.
It was still housing. And the weird thing is, if you want to connect golf, I've since given up golf because of its, because living in Cape Town where it's sort of day zero, no water, housing, no land, inequality,
And
all
then
that sort of
there's
stuff.
beautiful green golf courses.
Yeah. I was just like, I can't really put these things together. And so I gave up golf. But at the time, I always missed a golf day. So if there was a golf day, and in that world, it's construction and architects and QS, there was always a golf day. And you got work that way.
Okay.
And so I literally, I laugh about it, but we've played a round of golf, we've showered, we've suited up, and then there's always prize giving. And I'm literally at the urinals. And then this guy comes up next to me. I think he was called Steve. It was like, "Hey, Barry," and we're just chatting at the urinals, which you don't ever do. And he's like, do you want to bid for a job? I was like, "Of course we do." And that little conversation at the urinals, and like, "Steve, should we talk about it after we get out of the toilet?" And it was for a social housing company in London, and I knew that all the big architects would go for it.
Right.
But I knew that we could give everything we had to it.
Right.
And that became our biggest project.
Amazing.
And that was a planning project. So we could come up with some nice details and some nice ideas. Yeah. So that was fun.
Okay. So all the way back then, after 7 years, you made the choice to kind of not just chase the money, but do something with your skills that had a purpose associated with it, or at least position yourself into a place where that could happen, which is a tough decision, right? When you've got student debt and all of that sort of thing. But where do you think that decision stems from? Like, what were the things going on when you were making that decision in your head?
Golly, I don't know. I think that, you cannot separate the things of your life, right? Everything is entangled.
Yeah.
And so the journey of sort of moving away from this explicitly commercial realm, where I felt like you treat people slightly differently when you have that commercial mind. And there was something about design and wanting people to be part of the process of design, which I think probably stems back to just being a human, but also probably my faith as well. And the fact that we are called to love. And those golf days were sort of very sort of locus solus. There was no meaning in those places. Everyone knew why they were there. It's relations for making money.
Right.
And the brutal reality is that my previous principal, he would say, "I'm going out for supper." I was like, "Okay, that's great. Who are you going with?" "I'm going with this guy and this guy and this guy." And they were all clients. I'm like, "Your friends are your clients."
Right.
That doesn't mean friendship. Not if you're still in that realm of, what am I getting out from this? I'm just feeding that trough. I'm feeding that thing. And I'm just like, no, I don't think it's authentic. I don't think it's truly relationally authentic. So yeah, I think my faith probably had something to do with it. But you've got to find the balance. And later on in life, I would get the balance wrong because I'd tip the other way. But in that time, there was meaning and there was commercial viability. And getting that balance is critical.
Yeah.
Absolutely critical.
And I think that is honestly the grapple, right? Wanting to
100%.
do something of purpose with your life, but not do it to the detriment of your own personal sustainability. And I think we all, like even me, tic-tac back and forth. Like, I think of like a sailing boat, right? You don't just point in a straight line. You're kind of going like this. And I'm making a motion of tic-tacking back and forth. And I think that's the constant struggle if you want to kind of show up as human and be of service to the world, but then not doing it, you kind of lean a little bit that way too far and then you go back the other way and da-da-da. And yeah. How long did you work in the field here before you ended up, well, here as in the UK? How long did you work in a career as an architect before you ended up where I met you, which is Cape Town, South Africa?
I think it was 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 years in one place, 5 years in another. Yeah, all in North London.
Okay.
Things were shifting in the second practice because I was an associate, and then you think, well, do you become a partner?
Mm-hmm.
So that was on the table. And at the time, I was toying with an organization called Architects for Aid,
Mm-hmm.
which changed their name to Article 24. And I really enjoyed the idea of using architecture in a more generative and sort of, how do we use it in areas that really need it?
Mm-hmm.
And they did projects in Africa and different places. They would sort of send an architect to go and be part of a build, and they're a non-profit. But at that moment, I remember I must have had a conversation around Cape Town or South Africa, because I knew that essentially I'm like, how do we get back there? How do I get to that place? And she said to me, this lady, she was actually a rocket scientist. She worked for the NGO. She's very, very bright. She's like, it's not rocket science. Well, actually, I know rocket science. But, and she said, how else, if you don't get this, because I was one of two people to get there and I didn't get the job.
Okay.
If you don't get this, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to get there, sort of thing. But then within a short space of time, my wife was running a discipleship course at a church in North London. And at the end of each year, it's for young people doing applied theology. At the end of each year, you'd go on a mission.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually did the course 1 year. And she went on mission. And then we were then invited to be part of the teams going on it. And then she ran the course. So we went to Azerbaijan. We went to post-tsunami Sri Lanka, which was very brutal. And then there was an opportunity 1 year to go either to Paris or to Cape Town. And so the whole team, there was a line down the floor,
Mm-hmm.
jump left for Cape Town, jump right for Paris. And I was like, guys, I wasn't even there on that day. I'm like, I don't want to be involved. You make the decision.
Uh-huh.
I'm biased. I'm already there.
Right.
And one person said Paris, the whole team, the rest of them said Cape Town.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, thank you, Lord. And basically, there was an opportunity because someone in our congregation in North London had a parent who was a vicar in the parish of St. John's,
Mm-hmm.
Weinberg. And they said, well, you could go and work at the warehouse. You could, do really interesting things. So we went there for 2 weeks and it was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
We prayed in Manenberg. We went to Sweet Home Farm.
Mm-hmm.
We met Siambolaka Gum James and Chawe Klembasha. And it was an amazing time. And I'm there in the combi. I'm the guy in the combi driving. And I was the one with the purse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I realized even then around the story of power and who has the power, because we could choose where to spend the money,
Mm-hmm.
where not to spend the money,
Yeah.
all that type of thing. And you think, there's a power attached to this.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we had a very sort of deeply impactful time in Sweet Home Farm. And so the next year we had a chance to go back again. And we said, look, is there any chance we could just go back for 2 weeks to Sweet Home Farm? We don't have to go all around the houses. So we raised some money. We built a shack extension. We felt like heroes. We changed the world. We did cry a lot. And we built relations, and it was beautiful. And then at the end of that trip, I had a chat with Craig Stewart, who was the director of the warehouse. We spent 2 hours chatting, and basically we wanted to sort of gently lay the idea down that we would be interested in not just a short-term mission.
Right.
But Kate said, don't tell him what we want to do. So we were just talking about all the things, and I was talking about architecture, and he goes, oh, I know architects who do this stuff thing. And I was talking about Zimbabwe. I said, oh, I know these Zimbabweans guys. He's very well connected.
Right.
And I was like, no, you're not getting the thread. You're not quite getting what I'm saying here. And then got out the car at Sweet Home Farm. He's dropping me off. He goes, unless, of course, you're talking about maybe coming to volunteer at the warehouse. I was like, what? That's a crazy idea. What a great idea. Let's explore that. And so for the next year, we explored it. And by the beginning of the following year, which would have been 2009, we had to set our stall and say, right, let's go for this thing.
Okay.
We're not going to become a partner in the firm. I think we're going to become volunteers in the NGO. And we set a time, and we said the 9th of September. And it's like, obviously, it can change, blah, blah, blah. It was. It was the 9th of September we left.
Amazing.
With one little boy and an itch to scratch.
Mm-hmm. And I know that what ultimately you ended up doing in South Africa and where a lot of my students know you from is UBU Homes. So how did you make the jump from going to South Africa for a purpose mission related to church to then starting UBU Home and helping to build houses with sand?
I don't know.
That's actually what happened. So we don't get anything like concrete. That is exactly what happened. You ended up going there for one purpose. You started there setting out to do one thing and then ended up being captivated and almost massaging the two worlds together, right? Your desire for service and the skills that you have, which is, I think, very cool.
I think a lot of things get held in tension, don't they, at the same time? So when we first got there, we wanted to be part of the Sweet Home Farm team. All of the programs in the team were all women or young girls or something. So I didn't really fit in that paradigm. I just knew that the context was the right context because it broke my heart in the previous trip. So I was broken. If someone like Christina or Nontebeka would sing a particular song, I'm done, I'm finished. Yeah, so there was something about the song and the melody. But when we were in the community one Saturday morning, we were facilitating a geographer from the University of Cape Town to come and feed back some research she had done, and no one turned up. And so we're sitting outside chatting to her. This is now 2010, beginning of the year, and about 5 or 6 boys come up to us and say, "Sifuna uklala iball." And James was like, okay. So basically, we want to play football.
Right.
And all of a sudden, in that moment, because I think it was someone like Patricia Zweig or someone, she said, well, it's 2010. It's World Cup year. There's money for projects like this. You can go to Material, do a proposal. So we did a proposal. Even before we really had a team, there was money. And all of a sudden, we were every week playing on this field. Very dangerous because you had to go over a road, to go over another road, under a bridge, to go over another road to get to the fields. But obviously, if you're playing football, everyone's in. We're playing. So all of a sudden, it got very structured. And then we joined a program outside of Sweet Home Farm that's called a Mandela Edu Football. In those progressive days, because in the early days, it was a bit more progressive. And they formalized and they changed their structures. But in those early days, they ran a football league for boys' homes. And we were allowed to join as the only informal community because I sort of knew the guys. Let's connect. It's an amazing opportunity. And they would do football, life skills through football.
Okay.
And so we would use the opportunity to do, this is how we clean. Can we talk about education, talk about your homeworks, all of those sorts of things. And then we just added faith, and so that seemed like a logical thing. Food was part of it, and so if you've done your homework, you get to play.
Right.
Simple. They met Michelle Obama. They climbed mountains.
Wow.
They did some amazing things. They went to the stadium. So it was an amazing time. It was 3 years of the superstars of Sweet Home Farm. And at the time, a lot of my friends in England going, "Why are you running a soccer club? Like, you're an architect." But in the wisdom of the warehouse, they said, come be a part of the team. Don't be an architect.
Right.
Because you're going to cause pain, which was wonderful advice because I did come with that spirit. And actually, there's something we must critique in the missional spirit. We want to do the Lord's work and we want to do and all this sort of stuff. But actually, we need to understand that sometimes within that missional spirit, there is the savior spirit.
Right.
the white savior spirit, which isn't just only for white people, just because it's a spirit. So if it's a spirit, but it is manifest absolutely through the white missionaries historically. And you can cause pain if you don't think that God isn't already existing in a place.
Right.
I will introduce and I will bring this new idea and all this sort of stuff. And in the wisdom of the warehouse, they said, don't be an architect. And I was like, okay. So then the Superstars was an amazing middle space. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was a fundamentally necessary space for entering a community. Don't come and want to change everything. Come and listen and learn. And maybe work out how humble you actually are, because can you be taught by a 12-year-old? Can they teach you something of their culture and the story and of informality? And so Sia Bongo one day would say, you wouldn't last 2 days in my community. Instantly, my back goes up. I'm like, well, I'm like, no, you're absolutely right. I wouldn't. I wouldn't survive in your community. I don't have the resilience. I don't have the wherewithal, the ability just to stay alive. You'll remember a mural at UBU.
Yeah.
Of a guy. And I don't want to cry in this moment, but yeah. Golly. He's holding an egg. And fast forward a few years, Ziba and Dile Bonkolo would have gone through the Superstars program, and now he's ironing sandbags. In between UBU and leaving Sweet Home, they had a year of being in the back of a horrible little charity shop. I hated being there, but we were making, and Ziba doesn't speak, never says anything. And he stops working. He puts his iron down. And he says, the thing is, Barry, about living in community. I was like, what? And everyone's like, what is he doing? He's going, and all of a sudden we realized, just shut up. We're in church now.
Right. He's going to say something.
He's going to say something. And he says, the thing about living in community, it's like holding an egg. And your job is to hold the egg. Because if the egg falls, we die. And that sense of fragility, but the absolute profound understanding that it is so fragile, because he was essentially saying there are rules for staying alive in community.
Right.
So he started talking about the rules. But it's also the source of life.
Right.
And so there was this double-edged thing, and I was just like, oh my goodness. So they were teachers, and I needed that to even then go, okay, after 3 years, my visa shifted. I knew that being a volunteer wasn't going to help become a permanent resident or anything like that. You had to change it. Craig meets with a visa consultant, and they said, no, you've got to set up a business. And I was like, okay. And then Craig was like, do you think we could talk about community development, architecture, faith, urbanization, all of the things? And I was just like, whatever you've just said.
Yes.
It's a yes.
Yeah.
I just jumped in it. In my spirit, I jumped. So at that moment, it felt like I'd graduated from Sweet Home Farm Studies.
Right.
And at the time, we would pray every day in the warehouse. It was an extraordinary community. And after one of the meetings, one of the prayer times, I just felt in my spirit God say, beauty builds beauty. And I was like, something's just happened. And God, I don't really feel like God speaks to me audibly ever. I get it through nature and through different things and, weird things that shouldn't exist. I'm like, why is it here? And he speaks to me that way, but never really with words. And this was probably the only time it's ever been. And it's like beauty builds beauty. I was like, that sounds amazing. And I knew it wasn't for me. And so we spent a few months thinking about what that meant and then understanding what it might mean in terms of a translation. So yeah, that would have been 2012. And in and through that time, sand was already on the radar. We'd already, by 2012, done our first project.
Okay.
Because in 2009, go back to a living room in London, we're about to go on mission. And so you say goodbye to people. We've got friends that come over, a young couple, and he's quite charismatic. He's a thespian actor. And after supper, he grabs me by the arm. He goes, Barry, you're going to go to South Africa and you're going to build houses out of material which is all around you. I said, thanks, Stuart. What does that mean? Because I have no idea. I don't know anything about South Africa. This is the sense I have. And I think it was January or February by 2010, Sia and I are walking from Sweet Home Farm over the train line to Victoria Mhlenge, which is where his mother-in-law lived. And we stumbled across a build. So we didn't invent sandbags.
Mm-hmm.
It was already a thing. And someone was building a house with sandbags.
Right.
And we were like, what the heck is going on here? This looks interesting.
Right.
All of the bags were white.
Mm-hmm.
The sun was shining because it was summer. It was very bright. The floor was white because the floor was sand. The walls were white. Everything was like, it felt like we were in this ethereal world.
Mm-hmm.
And I grabbed James and I said, James, sand is everywhere. Because we were living in Deep River and underneath our grass was sand.
Mm-hmm.
We were fighting with water that we didn't realize at the time we didn't really have
Mm-hmm.
to keep the grass green.
Right.
But underneath is sand. It would have been a dune. And so I knew then that sand was the thing. And all of a sudden, here's a technology.
Right.
And fast forward a few months, and one of the ladies who is an intercessor, she would call herself an intercessor, she would come and pray with another lady from Kailicha, who's also someone who prays. And she goes, I'm turning 50, but I don't want any money. I think I need to help my friend
Mm-hmm.
because she has an RDP house, but she needs an income. Her eyes are bad. She can't really see.
Mm-hmm.
If I build her an extension, then she has an income for rent or something, even if it's small amounts of money. She says, Barry, you're an architect. And so many people came up to me, you're an architect. Can you help me with? I'm like, no, I'm not here for a little extension.
Right.
But I said to her, if you're interested in building it with sand,
Mm-hmm.
then let's do an extension. That's what we did. We ended up using the same guys that built the house in Victoria Mhlenge, and about 40 people were involved. And who did we have? We had the superstars.
Mm-hmm.
And they came through and they painted and they filled bags, and these young boys built a little extension. And that was kind of the start before it was the start.
Right.
So we built something before we started, which is kind of cute. Well, maybe that was the start. Yeah. And then UBU sort of got registered in about 2012. And then by 2013, we were out in the world.
Yeah. And the rest is history.
Is it?
And the story is still unfolding. I feel like the rest is still unwritten. To channel one of our fellow Englishes.
It's unwritten.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit, there's a lot in your story which is really incredible, and I'm sure we're going to have a part 2 when we work out everything that you're doing today and how that's unfolding. But from that first part of your story, like, if you could go back and give your university version of yourself some advice on the journey, what would you say
Oh,
with your hindsight?
it's very, very tricky because I made a choice not to become a type of architect that would sleep underneath the table working for what we call starchitects.
Mm-hmm.
The Zaha Hadids or the Herzog and de Meurons or the big name humans building the beautiful things. We absolutely need those things and we need that world, but I didn't want to be one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was going to become someone who used the lens to do something with humans.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it would be to that level. I'm trying to work out if I would say that there would have to be more balance. Because I paid a very high price for going at it and giving up a huge amount. And we can have a conversation around whiteness and being a British person with privilege and power and understanding that in a particular context. How do you exist within what we would call the zinc forest, the informal community? How do you exist there with all of that stuff? How do you exist there without perpetuating pain that obviously still happens? How do you avoid being that person? And I gave up a huge amount to not be the person that carries that pain on.
Right.
But it's come at a huge cost.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to work out, and I don't have the answer at this moment, whether or not I would say to him, like, find a balance.
Mm-hmm.
Because actually, if I had balanced it, we wouldn't have got quite as far as we did. I do think that we did significant amount of works that put self-build, certainly alternative tech, human-centered praxis into sort of the city of Cape Town's mandate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they did come up with a tender for emergency housing using alternative tech, and it referenced sandbags in
Mm-hmm.
the tender, which is the first time they've ever done it. And also in the facilitation of the UISP, the Upgrade of Informal Settlements Program in Sweet Home Farm, it was the quickest that a digger starts on site and then ends with the first phase being complete,
Mm-hmm.
for the simple reason that we had multiple engagements with the community. All of that comes at a cost.
Right.
You don't get paid for that work. You get nominal amount, and we just knew that in order to get the work done, you had to go beyond your remit. Would I have done it again? Yes, I probably would have, but I'm just saying the cost is great. So what would I say to the architect student? I think I would continually just say, you have to be your authentic self. I do think that you get a choice. You don't have to change the world, right? You don't have to be that person.
Mm-hmm.
You could just go live a version of a conventional life. It's perfectly acceptable. You're not less of a human. I just didn't want to be the guy who does all that, lives in a version of ease and comfort, and at some point go, well, where's the meaning in my life? And then you go, well, I need to give back.
Right.
I don't want to be that person. And now I need to give back. I'm like, that's tiresome. So I think I would have done a version of that anyway,
Right.
even if it wasn't. But obviously South Africa had this thing, it was already in me. It was already itching and scratching. And I, in 1998, during the student exchange from Liverpool, it was either like in the second year, they said 1 week in New York or 6 weeks in South Africa. Which one do you want to do? I'm like, this is a really difficult question. So I went to South Africa and we jawled.
Mm-hmm.
We partied. We had a great time. We had a so-called 3-week project at UCT. No one did any work.
Mm-hmm.
And actually I was just like, I know enough to know that in 1998, I knew enough to go, yeah, you can't do that again.
Right.
If you come back, you've got to do something different.
Right.
There has to be meaning. There has to be something. And I kind of believe in, this is such a tricky one. I believe that for someone like me, it's reasonable that you pay a cost. I didn't think it would be as much as it was.
Right.
But I do think, okay, do you want to spiritualize it in this moment? If you want to follow me, you must take up your cross.
Yeah.
And follow me.
Mm-hmm. And
that is death.
Yeah.
Death to what? So you talk about bubbles. We talk about, we live in the youth are saying, and actually other people are saying, we're in the most uncertain times. You rightfully over coffee said, well, we're not. Historically, there's been some crazy things in the world, the plague, all sorts of different things all over in the history of the world. But we have certainly since the Second World War enjoyed a certain level of ease and comfort. And it's almost like, well, if I don't get that, then it goes against my entitlement and my rights as a human being. It's like, well, you don't have any rights to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested in England, which I sometimes call the colonial isle, because I never grew up learning about how it became wealthy.
Right.
Now, it became wealthy through many different ways, but absolutely became wealthy off the back of black bodies.
Mm-hmm.
We would never see them.
Yeah.
The ships would leave and the ships would return. How convenient. How clean. And the true colonizers would become philanthropists. And they would build a hospital and a school. Without that money, we wouldn't have a hospital and a school.
Right.
And so we've enjoyed a certain level, a certain privilege of existing off the back of something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's historic, right? It's compound interest. It's compound wealth. And so I'm interested in that. At some point, I think it's reasonable for someone to take a hit and to pay a price. If we want a different type of city or a different story to be told, who gets to pay that price? And don't talk to me about theology of wealth and prosperity and attached to the grace of God and all this sort of stuff when he said he didn't ever live like that.
Mm-hmm.
He lived, do you want to follow me? Well, I'm going to die. And that's, if you want to be my disciple, think about the way that the disciples died, upside down in different ways. And it's like, yeah, they died because of what they believed. And I'm not here to sugarcoat a journey where I think that there is a version that we must also take up a cross for the sake of something different, for a different type of story. Because the humans that have been forgotten are worthy. They're worth something.
Yeah.
And more than that, they will teach us about a humanity that was maybe taken away from us in the story of our own becoming.
Right.
How do we become humans? Maybe we should listen to the people who are the experts.
Yeah. The people that didn't have the technology that was afforded us, and all they had was human. Yeah. Wow. I think that that's great advice. Imperfect, of course, but that's how we roll. And I think one of the things that I guess I have learned from the conversation we've had now and the conversation we've had throughout today is when you said balance, you said it where it was like non-committal. You're like, I think I'm saying balance, but I'm not, like that I'm not saying balance. And I think that's like the really interesting tension in this work that we do. I always talk to my students about going, like, you need to be sustainable in yourself because you can't help others if you're not good. But there's also this tick-tacking back and forth of sometimes it is going to come at a cost to yourself. And then you've got to catch it and kind of tick-tack back to the other side. So it might be, you might burn out and then you learn the lesson of the burnout and then you kind of come back, recenter yourself, and then you go again and things like that. So I don't think it's balance in terms of a standing still. I think there's a balance that kind of like riding a wave or like,
Definitely not standing still.
It's a flow. It's a flow where you walk back and forward across like this imaginary line that you're trying to find, but you're never going to get. And I think that that's the tension and the beauty, right, in this work that we do of going, okay, who am I and who's the human that I want to be in the world? And then I have all these skills and talents and I want to make a difference, but I don't want to, I have university debt to pay and I have all these complicated things like
I want to
saving
get married.
for retirement and getting married and having a family and this tension between me and taking care of mine and the universalism of taking care of the world. And then I always grapple with it not being my fault and not being my responsibility, but still wanting to contribute in the ways that I can. All of that. I think that is the constant kind of insecure walk that we walk to do this work. And I think your story is a great example of doing that in an authentic way where you don't get it right all the time. It's not rosy all the time, but it's honest. So thank you for taking the time to share your story and for the work that you've done with my students in the past. And I'm sure
love them. Please send my love.
Well, you're sending your love right now, and
love
some
you guys.
of them will be
if you're
really
listening,
jealous that I am with you right now in London, England, in Paddington, no less. Thank you so much, and can't wait to see what unfolds next.
Thank you,
Barry. As always, thank you for being so open and authentic and vulnerable with us. Your journey is still unfolding like all of ours, and it's such an incredible journey to witness. And I'm so excited for what the future holds for you. And to everybody who's listening, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode and listen to this conversation. I really hope that if anything, Barry's story inspires you to use the highs and the lows, the good and the bad, not as situations that happen to you, but situations that you can use to grow and develop and learn and change and really become the person that you really want to be in the world and make the impact that you want to make. We all make mistakes. We all start in certain places that we have no control over, but it's what we do from here that matters. And I think that if Barry's story has taught me anything, it's that. So thank you, Barry. Thanks for listening. And I will see you next week for my second South African episode.